the UN Security Council. It did just approve the U.S. Submitted resolution, which has this three-step process leading to reconstruction, first prisoner exchange, then a long-standing ceasefire, then reconstruction of Gaza. It's unclear how Israel is going to react to this, although I think history as a judge would say perhaps not well. But at the same time, this is indicative of, I think, a trend that you speak of in terms of Israel's overall situation being very unfavorable. And the fact, and one of the things that we didn't mention yet is the reason why there was so much bloodshed is because Al-Qassam, the Palestinian resistance, caught Israel and the United States conducting a so-called rescue operation that really was armed to the teeth to be a military operation, and hence massive fighting, massive casualties. So could you speak on one, we have a Patreon member question who says, what happens if Israel violates this UN resolution? Because now it has been passed, Russia abstained, but the rest of the Security Council said, okay, let's go for this ceasefire. What happens if Israel decides not to go along with it? And how do you see this ceasefire, this recent ceasefire proposal within the larger framework of how this genocide, this war is going?
Let me just throw in, I hate to do this, Dan, but my brain works in weird ways. And I don't like to leave any useful analogy unreferenced. You said that the Israelis got caught going in, and that led to this broader battlefield. That does somewhat alter the proportionality debate. It's still disproportional use of force, but it's not as though the Israelis said that this is automatically going to happen when the raid takes place. What happened is, as you said, the initial assault force came in, was detected by Al-Qassam. Fact is, there's a lot of reason to believe that these hostages weren't held by Hamas at all. These were held by the PFLP. And so, somebody caught them. The major firefight took place, which required then the Israelis to launch strikes to suppress the fire, and the civilians got in the way. And I can just hear people say, my God, those Israelis are so cruel and inhumane and all. Are people familiar with Desert One, Operation Eagle Claw? It was an American aborted plan to rescue 50 some odd American hostages held by Iran at the U.S. embassy in Tehran. There was also a smaller element of Americans held at the Foreign Ministry Annex. Delta Force, together with a team from Special Forces Detachment in Berlin, were going to launch an assault to free the hostages. But do people understand that the assault was going to be supported by an AC-130 gunship flying circles over Tehran? AC-130 gunship has 105 millimeter cannon, 40 millimeter cannons, 20 millimeter cannons. And if the mission had been compromised, because the idea is that they would seize the hostages, take them to a soccer stadium, and then helicopters would fly them out to an airfield that had been seized by U.S. Army Rangers, and C-141 transports would fly in, load the hostages on, then everybody would leave. The helicopters would fly out to the airfield, and everybody would leave. We'd blow up the helicopters, et cetera, et cetera. And if we got compromised, if the crowd in Tehran started to move, the job of the AC-130 was to lay down a wall of steel to prevent anybody getting near that stadium. And this meant that we could have killed, had we been called upon to do this, thousands, if not tens of thousands of Iranians. We would also have American aircraft flying in, ready to drop bombs and other things. We could have, had this operation gone forward, been in a situation where, in order to rescue 53 Americans, we would have killed tens of thousands of Iranians. That is literally the definition of disproportional response. But the American response would be, we had a right to get the hostages, and we also have a right to protect our force once we begin carrying out this operation. And so, we have to. I don't like to be fair to the Israelis, because I really don't think they deserve fairness in this in regard. But we just have to be responsible when we talk about this particular operation, and not be hypocritical. It would be hypocritical of me to sit there and throw darts at the Israelis without acknowledging the fact that, had America's hostage rescue operation in Iran gone forward, there was a real chance that we would have killed thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Iranians in the process. So that's that. Now let's get back to your question. Sorry, I had to get that off my conscience, because I don't like to be hypocritical. I like to be balanced. Where does this leave Israel? Israel is in a very difficult situation right now, and the Israelis know it. There's panic in Israel as we speak. In order for Israel, the nation, to exist, it needs to be literally a land of plenty, a land of comfort, a land of economic success. And to have that, Israel has to live in peace and harmony with its neighbors, and to be horizontally and vertically integrated with its neighbors from an economic standpoint. This was on October 6th. Everybody was talking about normalization of relations. Israel was negotiating normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia. Joe Biden had just gone to the G20 summit in India, where he bragged about what he called the India-Middle East Economic Corridor, which would connect India with Dubai, and Dubai with Saudi Arabia by rail through Jordan, into Israel through Haifa, into Greece, so that India and Europe are now connected by this corridor. And this is such a big deal that Benjamin Netanyahu himself briefed this during the General Assembly debate in September. Instead of putting up his cartoon figure of the Iranian bomb, he put up a map that showed, Israel's role in this. And this is what Israel needed to survive as a nation state: peace and prosperity. Israel will never again enjoy peace, ever. They're not going to defeat Hamas. Gaza is a permanent wound. It's not going to be resolved in Israel's favor. Israel is talking about expanding the conflict into southern Lebanon against Hezbollah. Israel cannot win that conflict. I think one of the reasons why Israel hasn't yet launched that invasion is because they were reminded of that fact by Hezbollah, who successfully took out several Iron Dome sites in the vicinity, letting the Israelis know that they can take out all of the Iron Dome sites, and Israel will have no ability to protect itself from tens of thousands of rockets that will land on Israel, fired from Hezbollah on a daily basis. And if you hit Israel with enough rockets over enough period of time, Israel doesn't exist. And the other thing is that Hezbollah isn't going to fight a fight that allows Israel to put 50,000 troops in the southern Lebanon to push Hezbollah back to the Litani River. Hezbollah has gone underground, just like Hamas did in Gaza. And while Israel is digging and fighting Hezbollah there, Hezbollah will appear in the rear of Israel and take Galilee, take the northern. Hezbollah will ensure that the next fight between Israel and Hezbollah isn't going to be fought amongst southern Lebanese villages, but amongst the villages and towns of northern Israel. And Hezbollah will win this fight. Israel now knows this. The Houthi have shown that Israel's sea lines of communications are vulnerable and have been successfully interdicted. And Israel has suffered billions of dollars of economic loss as a result. And then the continued attacks from Gaza, from Yemen, from Hezbollah, from Iraq now. The pro-Iranian Shia militias are now firing drones and cruise missiles that are striking Haifa, the city of Haifa. The bottom line is Israel will never know peace as long as it continues this current stance. The India-Middle East Economic Corridor is finished. It is not going to be revived. The concept of normalization of relations between Israel and its neighbors is ridiculous. Israel has lost it lost the support it enjoyed amongst other nations around the world. In fact, the only nation that unabashedly supports Israel is the United States. Everybody else is turning their back on Israel. Israel has lost the world, which means that if this is not rectified, and it won't be rectified, that millions of Israelis are going to start asking themselves the question, can we continue to live in Israel? Is it the quality of life that we were expecting? Is this a healthy enough economy? Do I want to subject my family to the economic pressures and the psychological pressures of living in a besieged Israeli state? And the answer is no. Millions of Israelis have dual citizenship. They hold second passports. And we've already seen hundreds of thousands of them flee Israel. And if this situation deteriorates, you'll see millions more. And as Israel depopulates, it becomes less and less viable as a nation state, especially in terms of the singular state. Israel's in big trouble. The only thing that's holding Israel up right now is the support of the United States. The United States just passed a resolution now that's been voted in favor of by the Security Council. If Israel disregards this, they're going to lose the United States. The United States will have no choice but to move forward and impose some sort of restrictions on Israel. And we can make the following observation. Throughout the modern history of Israel, especially since the 6-Day War in 1967, no Israeli prime minister has been able to remain in power without the support of the United States. And no American president has been able to be elected without the support of the state of Israel. We have a situation now where Joe Biden is probably going to be compelled to decisively act against the state of Israel. And this is going to create tremendous political problems for him here in the United States. And we have a problem for Benjamin Netanyahu that he is going to have to act in a manner which alienates him from the United States at a time when his government is in collapse. And there may be the necessity for re-election, and this is going to damage him politically. So this is a big deal, this resolution. It puts both the United States and Israel, both Biden and Bibi, in a lot of hot water, which only then comes back to the point I was making. None of this promotes stability and peace. All of this promotes continued chaos and anarchy. And this will be disruptive to the region, disruptive to Israel, and probably prompt even more Israelis to flee. I don't see Israel lasting the decade. I don't see Israel as it currently exists surviving another 10 years. It can't. Its economy will collapse. And it's the political isolation will be real. And as you move forward with a two-state solution, that only works if both states are viable. But as Israel depopulates, and remember, if Israel is compelled to move towards a two-state solution, there's going to be big problems. There's going to be a lot of Israelis that say, we don't want to live in a two-state solution. They'll leave. The other thing is you have a whole bunch of West Bank settlers in there who have stolen land that they're going to have to be evicted. That is another guaranteed outcome from this. The settlers cannot be allowed to remain in any construct that is Palestinian land. If the Israelis move against those West Bank settlers, there's going to be a crisis of confidence inside Israel. Again, those settlers aren't going to say, okay, we're just going to stay in Israel. These are Brooklyn Jews who fled the United States knowing they were going to steal land and stay there. These are people who don't believe in hard work. They don't believe in earning anything. They're thieves. They're thugs. They're murderers. They're bandits. And when they lose their settlements, they're going to go back to where they came from, the United States or Australia or Canada or Europe. They're not staying. Israel is going to depopulate and lose its most fervent, Zionistic elements, which means that the Israelis that stay behind are going to be those Israelis who are conditioned to the understanding that Israel has to live peacefully with their Palestinian neighbors, which means that the Zionist entity, this Zionist experiment, is finished, and that whatever emerges from this isn't going to be called the State of Israel. It's going to be called the State of Palestine. And hopefully it will incorporate a significant Jewish population, of course, a significant Muslim population, a significant Christian population, Druze population. The current population of Palestine is going to have to come together and learn to live together. I had an interesting question from somebody the other day who talked about maybe the Irish could provide some sort of guidance based upon the Northern Ireland compromises that have been made in terms of governance between Catholics and Protestants. And I thought that was a genius idea. So who knows what the future holds, but none of this bodes well for this entity known as Israel today, this Zionist state. The future does not look bright for them at all.
Yeah. And, when you mentioned the United States possibly, turning on Israel, or at least placing pressure on Israel to comply with something like this UN Security Council resolution, I immediately hearkened to this, to this video clip, this interview, or a brief press report that Antony Blinken gave now in Egypt, and I just want to show what he said,
and of course,
and have you react to it.
Israel.
Oops, sorry about that. Because and then we can finish up here, because I think it goes to show that there's a lot of, I think, very impassioned and quote unquote ironclad still support. The United States, I definitely agree, is feeling the pressure to bring this thing, or at least the iteration that we're in, this brutal genocide, to a particular kind of close. But even so, here's what Antony Blinken had to say when just after this horrific military operation called Rescue Operation happened. This is what he said when he landed in Egypt.
And of course, what separates Israel, the United States, and other democracies when it comes to incredibly difficult situations like this is our respect for international law and, as appropriate, the laws of war. So we know that Israel will take all of the precautions that it can, just as we would. And again, that's what separates us from Hamas. And of course,
that's what separates the United States and Israel from Hamas. Final word, Scott.
I loved what he said. And as appropriate, the laws of war.
As appropriate, yes.
I know that when I was going through my officer training, that and we received extensive training on the law of war. That the judge advocate who was up there schooling us never once said, "and as appropriate, the laws of war." He said the laws of war are absolute, baby, and you will go to hell if you violate them. I mean, that was drilled into our mind, the absolute imperative of Marine Corps leadership to ensure that the men and women that we're entrusted to lead into harm's way never allow the emotion of war to get the better of them. Never allow revenge and to allow the death of your fellow Marine to turn you into a maniacal killer of innocent civilians. There wasn't as appropriate. No, it was absolute, because the law of war is absolute. So Blinken gave away the farm there. That's one of the more dumb things that he could say. But the fact is, I mean, here we have the International Court of Justice, the court mandated by the United Nations Charter, calling what Israel is doing genocide. And we have a raid that appears at face value to have violated critical, critical elements of proportionality when it comes to this, the legal question of, can you use humanitarian, aid as a front for carrying out a military operation? Is that a violation? You're not allowed to launch attacks from hospitals. So Should you be allowed to launch attacks from a pier that was built for the purpose of delivering humanitarian goods? There's a whole bunch of questions here, but Blinken, is just lying through his teeth. Israel has not been operating in conformity with international humanitarian law, with the law of war. Israel is a gross violator of international law, and the United States, in facilitating Israel's action, is likewise a gross violator. So, with all due respect to the Secretary of State, he's just dead wrong on this. But again, what do you expect from a Biden administration which has provided blind support virtually for the crimes committed by Israel against the citizens of Gaza?
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.